Welcome to the Rankings Podcast, where we feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and elite personal injury attorneys and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Chris Stryer here, president and founder of Rankings.io, where we help elite personal injury attorneys dominate first-page rankings. You're listening to the Rankings Podcast, where I feature elite personal injury attorneys and innovative business owners. Speaking of innovative business owners, I have Braden Pollock on the show today. Braden is a well-known domain investor with a portfolio in the thousands, including sciencefiction.com, trafficaccidents.com, divorce.attorney, and many, many more. In addition to being a serial entrepreneur, he is an angel investor and holds an equity interest in several dozen companies. Among his companies is Legal Brand Marketing, which provides lead generation services to lawyers nationwide. Braden, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here. I just want to point out that you talked about how you represent elite attorneys, and then what about the entrepreneurs? I mean, you were specifically
innovative.
Okay, not elite. All right, just want to be clear that I'm not at all considered elite. That's fine.
Elite business owners. Hey, let's kick things off. With a loaded question here. Given your wide entrepreneurial pedigree, how did you first become an entrepreneur? How did you get started?
Jesus, pedigree. I don't think anybody's ever used pedigree in reference to me. Maybe my dogs. How did I become an entrepreneur? I guess because I couldn't really work for anybody else. I didn't have a choice. I always had that fire in my belly ever since I was a little kid. I just never pictured myself working for other people. I remember when I was in high school, I was in play production. We put on the plays in school, and people would write in the programs about how they were going to become famous actors. And I would write that I'm going to graduate, go to college, and then start a business. Always. I always saw myself owning my own business. And I always wanted to have multiple businesses. I'm not sure if that was a good idea or not, but here I am.
Well, one of the focuses that I really want to key in on is your legal expertise and particularly the premium domain name side. So how did you get started investing in these premium domain names? How did you notice the trend and like this opportunity to acquire these domains?
Yeah, good question. That actually came from the marketing company. So when we started Legal Brand Marketing, it was specifically DUI leads, which I will probably come back to. So let's put a pin in that. So we were representing DUI lawyers only, and they would come to us for everything. And we're going back 16 years, right? So I was their internet guy. I mean, literally lawyers would call me up and ask me like why they weren't getting their email, right? Which of course had nothing to do with me, but it was like computer related. And back then people just didn't understand the internet. Mm-hmm. And so we started building websites just because of demand. And so we would take an order to build a website, and we would acquire a domain for them. And that's just hand registering domain names. I wasn't even charging because it was $7 at the time, and I'm charging them whatever it was, $4,000 for a website or $10,000 for a website. So I'd throw it in, and I came across somebody. I don't know if he emailed me or I emailed him, and he had some really good legal domain names. Mm-hmm. And he wanted like a few $100 a piece. And so I just reached out to my clients and I said, hey, do you want these? And they had said, and most of them said yes. And they were like, well, if you think it's a good idea, then sure. And I just resold them for exactly what the guy was asking, like $300 or $400. But the guy said, if you take them all, I'll sell you the whole thing for $5,000 or something. And I collected most of that money from the names I resold based on this guy's pricing, because I wasn't upselling. And it ended up with this small portfolio with extra names. And kind of discovered this aftermarket that I didn't know existed. And then after a year or two, I had a couple of hundred extra domains that I had registered a few, I would go to my client, hey, which ones do you want? And he would take 3 out of the 5 or canceled orders or whatever it was. I ended up with a couple hundred extra. And I talked to a friend of mine that was the sales manager for Dock.tv. Tell me if this story is getting too long and too boring.
No, this is perfect.
Okay. And so I called him up and I said, you understand this domain stuff. So I have a couple hundred domains. Is there any way I can monetize them? They're just sitting there. They're all paid up for, the remainder of the year. And he said, park them. I'm like, what the hell is parking? And so he explained to me, you point them towards, there's these parking companies. You point in your DNS towards these guys' servers. They populate the domain with a landing page. So somebody types in the domain name, a landing page dynamically populates with ads, and then you get a cut of the ad revenue, which was mostly Google feed. And I was like, great. So I did that for a few months, and I had suddenly had extra revenue. And then what dawned on me one day, and literally I was sitting at my desk and I was kind of looking at these domains and I was thinking about it, and it struck me that people that were typing in whatever the domain was, dyvirginia.com, I realized those are my clients that I'm now sending to somebody else for 12 cents. And sometimes I was actually, they're my ads. And so I would be charged $8 for a click. And then that click was actually coming back to me through my network. And I was then getting my rev share, which was like 14 cents. And so when this struck me, I then redirected all of those domains to appropriate pages on my websites. And then, so now I kind of understand domains, and there's this aftermarket and parking. And then there was a conference that was in LA, which is where I live, 100 years ago. And so I went to this conference and discovered there's this entire world of domain investors out there and premium names. And there was an auction, and names are selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. I sat in an auction for sex.com and it went up to $9.3 million. And the guy said no and walked away because it didn't hit the reserve. I couldn't believe it. It ended up selling a month later for like $12.5 million.
Wow.
And so I was just fascinated by this world. I continued to buy legal domains and resell them. And I've sold thousands of legal domains over the years. And as I was going to the conferences, then I started speaking at the conferences, and it kind of became a fixture. Now I am the industry moderator. So I travel all over the world to domain conferences and moderate them, and learned about premium names. So not just legal names, but premium names being one word, dictionaryword.com names.
Right.
And in kind of being in the industry and going to the auctions, I learned about those and then kind of shifted my focus from the legal names to these higher value oneword.com names. And I did that some years ago. So here I am as it's kind of a side hustle, but it makes a fair amount of money. So you asked about domain names, and I gave you the longest possible.
Well, no, that's a great story. It's kind of interesting because I see a lot of these companies, but it's like, how did they get started? How did they develop their portfolio? And, I just want to point out to our audience, we're talking about the cream of the crop types of domains. Just in the legal specific, you've got expungements.com, divorce.attorney, some just really premium domain names. And then on the other side, things like pessimist.com, you've got, just all kinds of these just elite
not a
one
very
word.
Good one. That's the one you picked. That's not
Well, so let's jump into the practical use of these and the branding use of these. So how do they influence branding? How do they, not only from the branding side, but also from, do they affect SEO? I know Google said that they cracked down on, the benefit of the domain names, but did they really crack down from an SEO standpoint? What the use of these, how do you see these being used by your buyers?
So there are, in domain investing, it's like really any other kind of investment, alternative asset class. So there are categories. So for example, I don't know, there's people who invest in livestock. I don't know the first thing about livestock, but I'm sure there are things to know. You don't just go in and buy a bunch of cows, right? There's different kinds of cows and different ages and different values, and I have no idea, right? Domains are the same way. If we talk about, let's say, premium.coms, there are names that what we call EMDs, or exact match domains. So in your world, accidentattorney.com, right? Like that's a premium legal name.
Right.
And I have a number of names like that. So that's an exact match. So it relates exactly to the industry. But there are brandable names. And there's a couple of kinds of brandable names. There are names that mean nothing, right? Made up words. And then there are names like pineapple.com, which I own. Pineapple.com will never be used to sell pineapples. As a matter of fact, Dole reached out to me years ago and they offered like $35,000 or something, which is preposterous and,
right,
far less than I paid.
Right. I think I bought my domain for something like that, like 30,000, rankings.io. And that's not even near the level of quality.
Right. No, so pineapple.com is a 7-figure name. And I've turned down multiple 6-figure offers. I think the highest is probably like $200,000 or something. But it's for sure a 7-figure name. And there are 7-figure domain sales weekly. There are 8-figure domain sales all the time. And I would say at least once or twice a month. They're just not public, because who can afford to buy a 8-figure domain name, right? A company that does something else, right? And so they just bury it in their marketing expense. It's not what they do, so they're just not public with it, and they're almost all under NDA. I don't sell names under NDA. I always get that clause in the contract, and I strike it, and I send it back, and the lawyer comes back and, wait, you struck the confidentiality clause. I'm like, because I'm not going to be under an NDA. I will not divulge who the buyer is, because that's not meaningful, but I want the comps out there, because I'm part of this industry, and that's meaningful to me. And we always know who the buyer is because they start using the domain name anyway. Every once in a while, they don't. I sold Q.org to a guy, and and it was $500,000, and just the letter Q, and I never divulged who the buyer was, and you can see it's some crypto related thing if you go to the site, but I wasn't willing to not divulge the price. Like I but that's just me, and I want to give back to this industry that I've been in a long time and I'm very active in. But most big sales are under NDA, so we never hear about them. Voice.com sold last summer for $30 million. And it was bought from a public company, so it was released. But they didn't want to sell it, so the buyer just kept going up and up and up until they had to. I mean, it was $30 million was more than their entire year's revenue, so they had to say yes, right?
So you've got the branding component. It's easy to say one word. It's stronger. It brings a presence and clout just to some of these domain names.
Well,
and then
memorable,
you have right? It's memorable. Yeah,
you need a word that is not necessarily descriptive, right? But it needs to be something that is going to be remembered. I sold Packet.com for $350. I guess it was about a year ago, to a big company, raised a bunch of money, and they were operating on Packet.net. And you can't be .net and be consumer facing, because people are going to screw that up. They're going to go to the .com. When they type out the email address, they're going to default in their head to .com, and so there's going to be what we call email leakage. It's like a toll-free number. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? 800. Yeah. But 888-877-866-855, like these all exist, but that's not what our brain defaults to.
That's interesting. You know, when you're telling me this, I instantly think of a recent interview with Brian Chase for Business Chase. Their domain name's bestattorney.com.
Mhm.
I don't remember every attorney that comes on and their domain name, but theirs is very memorable. You know, those 2 words, those superlatives. It's a really good strategy. You know, kind of shifting over to this kind of transitions to your lead generation company, to legal brand marketing. How does this all work together? How does legal brand marketing help attorneys with lead generation and growing their firms?
Do you want to talk about the terrible domain name, or do you want to talk about what we do?
Let's talk about how you know, most of our audience is personal injury attorneys. So, and I saw that you have, you know, a motor vehicle accident, you know, segment where you sell MBA leads, and then you have.
I think MBA is actually our largest category.
Yeah, let's talk about MBA. Let's say hypothetically, I'm a St. Louis personal injury attorney and I'm looking to grow my PI firm. How does your organization help, you know, me grow?
Well, so what we do is we sell our leads based on practice area and geo, right? So it can be, you know, zip code, county, state, right? We have a lot of attorneys that buy more than one practice area because not everyone focuses. But so you said, where
let's just say St. Louis, yeah.
So you would buy St. Louis as a geo, and MBA is the practice area. We also have you know, personal injury and other related categories, but we break it down, and then we sell just qualified vetted leads. And if it's a bunk lead, you know, dispute it. We'll do what's called a post-qual, right? Post-qualification, make sure that it is a bad lead, because sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is a good lead. So we call it, and if we get the client on the phone, then we just hot transfer it back to that attorney and don't accept the dispute. But look, I think there's a lot of lead gen companies that aren't trusted because they are buying their leads from God knows what sources. They don't vet those. They just run them through their system. And then the lawyers calling these leads that are just bunk leads, right? And then they dispute it and they get upset because they're wasting their time. And so we vet all of our sources because we deal with lots and lots of publishers. After all these years, I mean, I don't think there's anybody we don't work with. And we accept the disputes if they're not good. And we have I mean, if someone Googled us now, I don't think you would find anything negative from anybody that's ever been a client. Because, you know, we stand behind what we do.
Yeah, so let me jump in here, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but so there's some well-known lead generation companies. You know, there's 4Legal, there's Thumbtack, there's Nolo. You know, FindLaw used to sell leads. How is the main differentiator where you vet these leads and you kind of scrub the bad ones? Is that the main differentiator?
Yeah, well, it's more than that. So if we have a publisher it's a lot of sources. We have our own websites for generating leads, right? And then we buy from, you name it. If we are buying from somebody that does not produce good leads, then we just stop buying from them, right? So if we sign up with a new publisher, everything stays in-house initially. We pre-qual them. We pre-qualify those leads before we send them out, because otherwise we're kind of blindly sending these unproven leads to our clients, and we're not going to do that because it's our reputation. So we make sure that the leads are good quality before we kind of open up and let these leads through our network to our clients. And so once that's proven, then we put them in our system. They do route to clients, but we get instant feedback, right? Because a client doesn't want to pay for a bad lead. So if we see bad leads starting to come from a particular source, then we'll take that whole source back in-house and pre-qual them before we send them to our clients. It costs us more money, obviously, but it's our reputation.
Right. So yeah, that's more time for you to go back and vet them instead of the direct source. And, does your company offer, territory exclusivity, DMA, because I know some of those companies I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to throw any one of those under the bus, but some of those, they'll source, 5-10 attorneys, the same lead. And it's just like, okay, whoever gets it first gets it. How does that part of your business work?
Yeah. And that company doesn't exist anymore. Right. So that company, they sold themselves. They're part of Nolo, right? Which is
right.
Most companies. They tried to buy our company a couple times. So that company that would sell a lead 10 or 12 times, obviously you can't do that, right? Because if
it's a conflict of interest.
Well, look, this particular company that will remain unnamed, they would sell it for $80. They would sell it for $2, right? Because they would retail it and they would sell it for $2 as if it was a backstop lead. And they would just take anything, right? And so, which is not sustainable, because the people, the leads themselves, the people that are looking for a lawyer, they're pissed, right? When the phone rings the 4th time, the 5th time, the 6th time, they're mad, right? And so now if you are the 8th lawyer to call this person, they are not happy. And then that lawyer gets an earful. That lawyer then calls us saying, what the hell, you sold this lead 8 times. I'm like, no, we didn't. We sold it once, right? And that's true, but we bought it from somebody that sold it as many times as they possibly could. So, those leads, those relationships, we killed those relationships long time ago. And that wasn't sustainable. Even that company doesn't even exist anymore.
Got it.
It's just bad practices. So what we do is, if we are buying from a third party, we are buying it exclusively. And that's like, that it has to be the case, because we need to be able to control what's happening with this lead. It can't be like, well, they've sold it a few times. Like, no, for sure, we're buying exclusively. Now, with us, you can buy from us exclusively or non-exclusively. If it's non-exclusively, that means we will sell it up to 3 times. Okay, so possibly 2 other buyers, but this going into it. So that means you're paying us whatever the number is. You're paying us $65 instead of $95, right? You're paying less, but you're sharing it. And so now it's kind of a race to the finish. But everybody knows this going into it.
Right.
You want it exclusively, you could pay more. You want it, if you have, and look, and what we will tell lawyers when they ask, well, what should we do? Okay, well, who's taking these calls? Do you have a call center? Do you have salespeople at the ready? Like that immediately respond to the emails, immediately call back, are there to answer the phones? You are going to close more leads. You can be competitive. You can share that lead. You don't have to buy it exclusively if you don't want to, because you're gonna beat them to the punch, right?
Yeah, not only that. So a PI firm in the same market may have different criteria for the level cases they take, for whether it's soft tissue to major injury. So, that could be a factor too. And the amount they're willing to spend on a lead, with those criteria, it may be much higher than, the soft tissue. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of my next question was on pricing. It all comes down to ROI and return on your investment, whether you're doing PPC, SEO, whatever, whatever form of marketing in terms of direct response or direct lead gen. So, the value of a lead in St. Louis, and I always had this debate with a lot of individuals, a lot of people in our industry. The value of a lead in St. Louis for car accident is different than the value in, say, Los Angeles. Right? Yeah. Much larger market, more competition. So is your pricing model, do you differ by geography, or is it just a fixed cost on your MVAs and that's what the cost is?
I believe MVA is one cost across the board. And
wow.
I'm not certain. And look, I don't run the day-to-day anymore. This company, like I said, this company's 16 years old and I do a number of other things. So I think, although somebody's from my team is going to watch this video and go, no, that's not I'm not sure is the answer.
Okay.
But
yeah, and that's fair.
I do know in other practice areas, it is geo-specific. I just don't know about MBA.
Gotcha. So, being in business 16 years, obviously you've vetted, the best sources and kind of, my final question on this is, how are you positioning this company for growth? Is it more about acquiring new sources for the leads and setting up those relationships? Is that the main component? I know you don't do the day-to-day, but overall vision, I'm sure you're highly involved in that.
Yeah. So a couple ways. So we are, at the moment, we are transitioning. I shouldn't say transitioning because we're not moving away from what we're doing now, but we're layering on a wholesale component where we are buying in much larger volumes. So we're buying at wholesale and selling at wholesale, right? And then, you kind of have to understand this industry. Everybody works together.
Right.
Nobody's an island in this space. We're all pinging each other, and it doesn't matter who generates this lead. It bounces around to everybody until somebody can place it, right? So there are practice areas that have super high volume, and there are wholesale sellers and there are wholesale buyers, and we do both. And so we're focused on some of those larger volumes, but we also have a retail sales team. And a lot of lead gen companies don't retail. They don't have a sales team. They don't have customer service. They're not charging credit cards every month, right? It's a different model. And frankly, if I was to start over, I might take that model, right? Because I've got this big team of salespeople that are calling lawyers every day, right? I've got customer service people and account managers and an accounting department. And, I've got all of this overhead that other companies don't have at all, right? Because they just generate the lead and then wholesale it off, and that's it.
Right.
So we're focused on building out this wholesale division. And the advantage is we can also pull from that and retail, right? So now we have all this volume going through, and the salespeople can look at that wholesale volume and pull some of those practice area and geos out of that to retail it.
Nice.
Which increases our margin. But the wholesale margin is totally different, right? So it might be 5% or 10%, but in volume.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, I love that.
And then layering on more practice areas. So when we started, we were DUI only for years, just DUI. And frankly, 16 years ago, there was no one generating DUI leads at all. I was the first company to generate DUI leads, and we crushed the market. We built a giant website. It was a 40,000 page website when we launched, and we just crushed everybody. And so no matter where you were in the country, you had to come to us if you wanted to compete, because even if you were number one, we launched our website and suddenly you were number two. Now, SEO is a little bit different nowadays. It's not quite so easy, but we did very well at the very beginning. And then I bought some other DUI sites kind of popped up after mine, and I acquired them. And so I just wrapped up that whole industry. And then over the years, it's evolved into other practice areas that we've launched one at a time, because it's like going into a whole other industry, right? Mm-hmm. Just because they're lawyers doesn't mean, like, a bankruptcy lawyer doesn't know a DUI lawyer doesn't know an accident attorney.
Right.
And so one practice area at a time we roll out, and that's either we're doing it. The salespeople are out there making the calls, or I acquire a competitor, somebody that's in that space. So for example, we got into traffic tickets a while ago. There was the biggest traffic ticket provider was called Ticket Void, and we acquired it. So it was easy to fold in. Made sense to start selling traffic ticket leads, and that client base, it was easy to upsell them with with personal injury and criminal and auto accident and DUIs, because most of those traffic ticket buyers weren't solely traffic ticket. And then the traffic ticket inventory that hadn't been sold, we were able to upsell our client base that were doing DUIs and auto accidents, et cetera. So it was a pretty good fit. And I've acquired a few companies that way and folded them in.
Nice. Yeah, I like the acquisition strategy, and in fact, it's just an interesting strategy. And I've even looked at acquiring individual landing pages and doing it with permanent 301 redirect after they have that ranking. So that's a whole different conversation. So I really like that strategy, and that's what it's all about, and that's how you get your margins to be able to sell these leads at the price that your buyers will spend money on them, because they have all these different ranges of levels that they can make these investments at. So obviously, I mean, you've developed kind of this unique expertise and domain names and selling leads and the legal vertical and kind of angel investing. You particular, do you have a mentor that's kind of guided you, or is it more business books related? Who's some of your mentors or some of your favorite business books?
Let's see, I'm reading Blitzscaling right now. I've been working on that for a while. Mentors, God, they're all over. There's no one really specific in the industry that mentors. It's more kind of broad. So there's this attorney that I worked with for many years in another business who what was fascinating about him, really, really bright guy. He taught me basically to dig a little deeper. He was a guy that would just uncover stuff. He wouldn't call the expert to try to hire the expert that you couldn't hire. He would call the expert and say, who is it that you think, is really doing well in the field, right? And that's the person you could hire. He would just learn how to dig down an extra couple layers, and taught me how to think of things a little bit differently and how to pay more attention. And that kind of thinking I've applied to everything that I do.
That's incredible. So that's where you're out in front on the domain names too. It's just, you see these, I noticed that it wasn't just .coms that you own. You own the new top level domains, the TLDs, the .attorneys, the .lawyers and domains like that.
Well, So here's the funny thing about that is going a layer deeper. So you mentioned divorce.attorney, and I have some names like that, some .attorney names that I didn't buy them. What I did was I did a deal with a company with the registry before they launched. And it's what's called a founders program. And so they gave them to me if I was to promote the names, because I'm known in the investment industry, in the domain investment community. So I built them out, and so that they had names, they had websites that they could, when they launched, their websites that were already built, so they could showcase them. They could announce to the domain industry that I had acquired a portfolio. And then I wrote my wife into it, who's a well-known attorney. And so she did some commercials. They sent a crew out to the office, and she did some commercials.
Nice.
With those domains. There are, I've been in other founders programs. And sometimes, so I mentioned Q.org, for example. I bought a portfolio of single character.org names from the registry, never been released before. So instead of trying to buy stuff like this on the market, I just go straight to the registry and offer them enough money and write a business plan and make a plea and try to get them to sell me the names before they've been released to the public. So with .org and with .attorney, I use that strategy.
Wow. That's awesome. So, you talked about kind of like your vision of seeing things and how you had this mentor where you dig a layer deeper. So what are your high value activities today? What are the actions that generate the most impact for your businesses?
Oh God. The most impact, probably if I stay out of the way. All of my companies have a general manager or president that I hire from within the industry. So these people oftentimes have more experience than I do. So legal brand marketing, for example, I started it myself in my spare bedroom in my house. I get up every couple of hours and forward the leads manually because I didn't have a CRM at the time. But fast forward, the woman who runs that company, she's been with me for 12 and a half years. Like who knows more about this business? She, what she does every day, showing up at the office and dealing with the staff, or me. She knows far more. They don't need me now, right? Now we certainly talk about kind of the direction of the company, but not the day to day. The director of business development, he's been in the industry for 13 years. I was chasing after him for years to come work for me. Took a long time.
Is that wouldn't happen to be old Andy Northcutt, right? Yeah, he's definitely an A player. Yeah. Right.
So everybody knows Andy in this space.
Mm-hmm.
And I've known him since he was just out of college, and it was his first job. He went to work for a guy that I knew, a competitor, but I worked with him. And so I knew Andy, and all this time he's been in this space. And I was always trying to get him to work for me. And so finally he made the leap. It took years. Actually, I had to coax his wife into it first.
So your high value activities, you'd say, is you find these A players, these integrators, and they implement your vision and then kind of take over the day to day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have other companies that I have an appointment later with the president of one of my companies that's been in this industry, been in that industry for 40 years. 40. I can't compete with that.
I would say that's a unique talent because most of us business owners, it's tough to let go and to let someone else lead, right? We it's the E-Myth you're talking about, manager, maker, technician. I haven't read it for a bit, but it's like that last hat to become the owner instead of the manager. And that's where I think a lot of us struggle. So that's a really strong skill, and it's not common for most, I would say most business owners.
Just to stay out of the way. First of all, I could not, I couldn't do all the things that I do if I was trying to control everything. And also finding good people, frankly, it comes down to money, right? You just have to be willing to pay the going rate. I like to think I'm a decent guy to work for as well. Most of the people that work for me stay around for years. And I think it's because I appreciate, their skill set and I let them make the decisions. Like I said, stay out of their way. And if they need me, right, they know how to find me. They can ask me questions, but otherwise I need to trust that they know what they're doing.
That's awesome. I love that. Braden, so, what question, one final question here. What questions or stories do we not talk about that you feel would be important for our audience? Primarily personal injury attorneys, hustlers.
For hustlers or for
for personal injury attorneys?
Yeah, I would say certainly don't be afraid to test people like yourself that do SEO. If you sit back and do nothing, you're going to get crushed. And the only way to grow is to continue trying new things, whether it's SEO on your site or buying leads. And these aren't mutually exclusive, right? So you certainly can't rely on a third party to provide all of your business, right? That's not a smart move. You should be building your website and have your own brand and be competitive on your own. But buying leads, you're supplementing your business. Like why? To me, it's craziness why someone would not want to buy leads. I've talked to people where they say, look, I'm reallocating this money to, my own website and I want to generate the leads on my own. I say, okay, I get that. However, these leads I'm still going to generate. They're not going to stop being generated because you've reallocated your advertising budget.
Now your competitors are going to get them.
So I'm going to now sell this to your direct competitor. So what's that cost, right? So really the answer is you need to do both.
Yep.
And the thing is that with what you do, that takes time, right? So somebody hires you and it takes you many months to get that website up and competitive, right? With leads, we turn you on and instantly you're getting leads. We don't have, the campaigns were built years ago. You're going to get them immediately, right? And that's pretty meaningful, that I send you a lead 5 minutes after you sign up, and now you have a real live client that you're going to take their credit card from, right? Or, well, in your case of MVA, no credit card. But, you have a real live client that you can sign right away, as opposed to waiting months. So the answer is do both, but do something.
Right? Absolutely. Multi-channel advertising, they all kind of work together too. You start, and that helps to build your brand equity. You start being known, you have more money to reinvest in all your different avenues, because ultimately it's all about attention, and there's ROI built in. And that's why you have these systems to acquire these sites that generate the leads at a price that that your clients can still generate an ROI on. So it's a win-win.
Yeah. So every single one of your clients, while you and I don't compete, right? Because I don't do SEO and you don't sell leads, but you should be upselling your clients. You should be providing leads to them, either buying and reselling them or referring them to someone like us. But every one of your clients should also be buying leads to supplement what they're doing with you.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Guys, we've been talking to Braden Pollock, premium domain name owner, angel investor, serial entrepreneur, and founder of Legal Brand Marketing. Braden, where can people go to learn more about you?
I'm on the Twitter and Facebook and legalbrandmarketing.com.
Braden, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Rankings Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.